Guys, welcome to this new lesson. In our previous lesson, we ended with primitive data structures, and in this section of our lessons on data structure, we are going to be looking at non-primitive data structures. Now, you'll recall that in the previous lessons, we said primitive data structures are mostly simple data structures that are manipulated by the machine instructions. Now, in this series of lessons, we are going to be looking at non-primitive data structures. For our lesson plan, we are going to have a lesson title, we are going to have introduction, we are going to have lesson content, we are going to have conclusion, then we have practice, exercise, and assignment. Now, for introduction, non-primitive data structures are derived from primitive data structures. So what are we saying here? We are saying that you can derive a non-primitive data structure from a primitive data structure. Secondly, they cannot be operated or manipulated directly by the machine level instructions. You will notice that in primitive data structures, they can be manipulated directly by the machine level instructions. Here, they cannot be operated because they are more complex. Non-primitive data structures are more complex forms of data structures that are used to store a collection of values and provide more flexible operations on data. So we are saying that non-primitive data structures are more complex compared to primitive that are simple. Now, classification of non-primitive data structures. Now, non-primitive data structures can be classified as follows: linear data structures and non-linear data structures. And of course, when we want to look at linear data structures organize data elements in a sequential manner where each element is connected to its previous and next neighbor. So linear data structures, we have elements are in a sequence like what we have in arrays. It is a data structure that maintains a linear relationship among its elements, and of course here the data is arranged in a linear fashion. What are some common examples of primitive non-primitive data structures that are linear? We have arrays, we have linked lists, we have stacks, and we have queues. Okay, now we proceed. Non-linear data structures. Non-linear data structures do not have a simple sequence, but rather a hierarchy. So students should be able to distinguish between a linear and a non-linear data structure in terms of arrangement. So in a linear data structure, we have elements are related to each other, and in a non-linear data structure is a hierarchy, and data elements are not arranged in a sequential order, and there is a hierarchical relationship between individual data items. So what are some of the examples? We have trees and graphs. So students are expected to be able to distinguish between non-primitive data structures and the different classification of non-primitive data structures, linear and non-linear. Okay, so in summary, non-primitive data structures are derived from primitive data structures. They cannot be operated or manipulated directly by the machine level instructions. Also, non-primitive data structures are more complex that are used to store a collection of values. And of course, they are classified as linear and non-linear data structures. So my dear students, in this first lesson under non-primitive data structure, we had an overview of what non-primitive data structures are. We look at the classification of non-primitive data structure as linear and non-linear. We saw some examples of linear data structures like arrays, linked lists, stacks, and queues. And we have non-linear data structure, trees, and graphs. So for revision questions on this topic, you are expected to answer the following questions to permit you have a mastery of this lesson. The first question is to define a non-primitive data structure. The second question is to explain the different types of non-primitive data structures. And the third is give examples of the different types of non-primitive data structures. So when we have these questions and you are able to answer these questions correctly, then you have gone through the lesson successfully. So thanks for watching. And this is the end of our lesson. In our next lesson, we are now going to focus now on the different classifications of non-primitive data structures. We are going to start with the linear data structures, then we'll move to the non-linear data structures. And we should note that in official exams, students are expected to understand arrays, the implementation of arrays as linear. The stacks, the queues are not really tested practically, but we need to understand the concepts. For non-linear, we have to understand trees and graphs. So for trees, we'll not implement, we'll need to just do practical exercises on them. So thanks very much for going through this lesson, and see you in the next lesson.